Welcome to today's edition of the Statler Financial Radio Show. Your financial security is our business. Have a question for the team? Call today, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
Have you ever looked back at something you've never done, some decision that you made, or something you said and thought to yourself, oh boy, I really wish I hadn't have done that? Of course you have. We all have. It's something we always think about. However, let me ask you this. When it comes to the things that you wish you had a do-over in life, do any of them have to do with the decisions that you've made about your money? We're going to dive into that pretty shortly, but welcome everyone to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about all about regrets, specifically the financial regrets that many Americans share. Phillip Statler of Statler Financial Services is here with me to take us through the results of a new survey outlining the regrets that the majority of Americans feel concerning about retirement and how you could potentially get ahead of them. Phillip, welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
Hey, Danielle, doing well today. We dodged a bullet here in Highlands County. As Helena went by, we were at the very, very fringe. I mean, I don't even think we got a half inch of rain, some winds. Now, unfortunately, my neighborhood a tree went down, so we did lose power for about 8 hours that night. But most people here, no real issues. And so we are very, very thankful. I'll tell you, one concern I have, though, is for new people that moved into our area that they get lulled into thinking, well, it won't happen next time either, and not be prepared. And that's probably the worst thing you can do is not be prepared when one comes, because that's when it'll hit. And so You want to make sure you actually do prepare every time to tell you one's coming our way.
Definitely. And Phillip, thank you for that update, because I know many families and communities are definitely being impacted by that. And one of the things we don't want to regret is preparing. And so as we dive into today's show, let's start with the results of this new survey. Phillip, tell us what it found about the financial regrets of American retirees.
Well, the survey was done by Bankrate.com. And so they're a national consumer financial services company, and they surveyed thousands of retirees in America about the regrets that they may have in retirement. And here's some of what they found. First, they found that a staggering 77% of the folks out there have a financial regret. Now, that's not just retirees. That's everybody out there. To put it another way, that's 4 out of every 5 Americans that have some financial regret heading into retirement. So if we kind of break that down specifically, I look at it this way. There's the number one regret mentioned was this, Danielle, that 22% of the folks out there regretted not saving for retirement soon enough. They started too late trying to catch up, and that was an issue when they got time to retire. 18% of the folks out there regretted not saving enough emergency money for emergency expenses, and that just having that liquidity and that safe money there. And then about 14% regretted taking on too much credit card debt, because credit card debt can be devastating when you switch from being employed to being retired. I mean, that's a big adjustment, and our income doesn't usually stay up as high as it was when we were working.
That's right. And I know many people have questions about this, Phillip. And the stats that you just shared, 77% of people have a financial regret. That sounds very alarming. But why do you think that so many Americans have regrets going into retirement?
Well, I think in simple terms, it's usually one of two reasons, right? Either they didn't start planning early enough for retirement, or they just didn't plan at all. They went into retirement with no plan. Now, both of those strategies, if you call them strategies, are recipes for disaster and recipes for missing key details that need to be addressed. You know, not being able to recognize opportunities and failing to prepare. And those are mistakes that turn into regrets, Danielle. And that's unfortunate. But it happens to a lot of folks out there. And that's one of the reasons that I sat down and really, a couple of years ago, really put some thought and energy into developing our core retirement design to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. And we want to start with looking at the risk that they take on before they retire and after they retire. We want to look at taxes. What does that look like for them? And how can we put them in a situation where they can pay the least amount of taxes possible throughout retirement? And then the third key aspect of our core retirement design is income. Where's your income going to come from? And we develop a written retirement income plan just for them. Folks, look, if you have not started planning or you have not looked at a plan in the last 5 years, now is the time. If you are getting close to retirement or if you've already retired, it's not too late to put a plan in place. Give us a call at 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis. Folks, that's a 30-minute phone call with you and I where I'll answer your questions and make sure that you are on the right path to the retirement you always dreamed of. Again, that number is 863-877-1188 for our core retirement analysis. Don't procrastinate. Give us a call today to get on our calendar. That's 863-877-1188.
You know, you don't want this to be another regret that you think about later. So we always like to remind our listeners that there is no cost, there's no obligation to talk with Phillip and his team. So go ahead and use that number. Give them a call at 863-877-1188. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. You are just one call away from your own retirement dream. So Phillip, as we continue this conversation about financial regrets, you know, of those who say that they have financial regrets, are they at least making progress toward, I would say, undoing some of these errors that they regret?
So here's the deal. Some are, but unfortunately, almost half are not making any progress. And that's 40% of the folks out there that have a financial regret haven't made any progress on it in the past 12 months. Another 44% of the folks out there say they've made some progress in the last year, but still not where they need to be. Only about 16% of the folks out there that have made some significant progress over the last year to put themselves in a better position.
And I know many people also are curious, why, in your opinion, would people really not be making more progress on these issues that they regret? What do you think is keeping them back?
Well, I think we can dig down deeper into the survey, and a lot of the respondents simply found it too difficult to get a jump start. Now, that's because things cost too much, as well as some other economic facts. As a matter of fact, 44% of the folks out there that with a financial regret say that inflation and high prices have negatively influenced their progress on getting past that in this last 12 months. Others have some financial regret, also blame their employment situation, about 18% or so. And then the other one was interest rates. You know, trying to get out of that credit card debt, interest rates got jacked up over the last 2 years. And so that's making it more difficult for people to get those credit cards paid off.
And I know, Phillip, too, like when it comes to retirement planning, I think let's even give more advice on what would your advice be to people who are living with financial regrets going into retirement? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say this: don't let your regrets make you a deer in the headlights. Don't be frozen, right? Mm-hmm. Don't be frozen. It isn't too late, even with the inflation, even with the roadblocks that we can see that have been thrown our way. The best path forward is still to have a plan in place. If you don't have savings, if you don't have that plan, then the time to start is right now. Folks, listen, again, this is why I developed the core retirement design. I don't want anybody to head into retirement with the biggest regrets they've had by not saving enough for retirement, or not knowing if what you have is going to be enough to get you through retirement. These are the reasons that I developed the core retirement design. I want to make sure that folks, when they get ready to retire, aren't afraid of that word retirement. I want you to be ready and able to retire and enjoy the best life ever. That's, again, why I developed the core retirement design. There's 3 prongs to that design. The first is risk. A lot of folks don't realize it, but about 70% of the folks, 60 to 70% of the folks out there heading into retirement haven't made any adjustments to their portfolio. They're still invested as if they're working. And so they have too much risk in their portfolio. There's another 20 to 30% of the folks out there that actually, they don't have enough risk in their portfolio. Somewhere in that 10 to 20% range have got it just right. And I will bet that it's not you. That's why I developed the core retirement design, to assess the risk and make sure that it lines up with the amount of risk we need to have and should have heading into retirement. The second thing that I'm big on is taxes. Folks, we want to make sure that we are paying the least amount of taxes possible, not this year, next year, but over your entire retirement lifetime. And that's why it's a key part of our core retirement design. And the last thing we want to make sure we have in place is an income plan. You need to know where your income's coming from, how long it's going to last, to make sure that you can retire, that you can enjoy your retirement the way you had always planned to do it. Again, that's our core retirement design. And Danielle, it starts with a phone call.
That's right.
We have a conversation about where you are now, where you want to be, and how you have made progress towards your dream. And if you're not on the right path, I'm going to tell you. But likewise, if you are on the right path, I'll tell you, look, you're doing fine. You don't need my help. Just keep doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But you need to know that you're on that right path. Again, that's why I developed the core retirement design. To get started, it's easy. It's a 30-minute phone call. Give us a call to get on the calendar, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
We want to remind you that there is no cost, there's no obligation to talk with Phillip and his team. Take advantage of this offer from Phillip today to make sure that you will not run out of money. You may even also boost your returns over time. So get started today. Call that number, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Hey, you want to stick with us because we are just getting started right here on the Statler Financial Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Who likes uncertainty? Wall Street certainly doesn't. With fears of a potential recession and partisan politics, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. What will your future look like? Will your taxes go up? Will your savings go down? Here in the Sebring area, financial advisor Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services have seen uncertainty come and go. Phillip can help you create a plan designed to preserve your finances in uncertain times. And it's not a matter of if those uncertain times will show up, but when. Call 863-877-1188 now to meet with Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services. Call 863-877-1188 and schedule your visit today. 863-877-1188. Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Gone are the days when retirees could rely heavily on substantial external support like Social Security and robust corporate pension plans. Today, not only are pensions a fading memory, but the reliability of Social Security and benefits is also increasingly uncertain, placing the burden of securing a financially stable retirement more firmly on individuals. So, Phillip, as a financial advisor, what do you feel are some of the greatest risks that threaten financial security during retirement?
Well, I think there's a handful that we see on a regular basis that are concerned to most everybody out there. Let's start with, we're living a lot longer. right? So we've got this increase in life expectancy that so many more people are reaching that, age 100. So that's a big deal. Making sure that we don't outlive our money. And part of that is we're living so much longer that becomes a concern going into the planning process. And so I say that's one of the biggest ones is life expectancy and not making sure you don't outlive your money. The second one is market volatility. People are really concerned about the ups and downs of the market, the risk that's there. And that's why, we developed our core retirement design to help, offset some of those issues that people find when it comes to market volatility. And that can be a problem the closer you get to retirement. And then obviously we've had this issue, inflation, for the last couple of years. Inflation has really eaten away at people's savings, at the money they're getting. Expenses continue to rise. And not only inflation going up, but we know that at the end of 2025, going into 2026, that we are going to be seeing higher taxes unless Congress does something, which lately they haven't been able to do anything. So I don't think that that's going to change. I think we're going to automatically revert back to the old tax rules that we had prior to the Trump tax code changes. And so we know the taxes are going to go up. We need to plan for that, and we need to build a plan that helps offset some of those rising taxes. And lastly, rising healthcare costs. Healthcare costs have continually risen even higher than inflation. And so that's a big problem when it comes to retiring, because we know that as we retire, our healthcare costs are going to go up. I mean, it's just, the older we are, the more we need the doctors. And so we automatically will see some increases there, Danielle.
Phillip, you've definitely outlined several significant challenges that today's retirees face. You mentioned plenty: increased life expectancy, market volatility, inflation, rising taxes. I mean, the list goes on. So, Phillip, in your experience, what issue do you find most retirees struggling with the most, especially when it comes to planning for their financial security?
Well, let's look at a couple statistics here. On average, men who reach age 65 can expect to live statistically until age 84, while women can expect to live to age 87. Now that's a long time. And I know on my side of the family, I've got some really long genes. And my grandmother was 100. I have a grandfather who lived to 90. My dad right now is 87. So, my family seems to outlive these statistics. So it's really concerning to me that we continue to live longer. Well, if we live longer, that increases the impact of all the other risks that we have, like inflation, taxes, and market volatility, as well as healthcare, because those things are stacked, right? If inflation goes up one year, well, that affects the next year because usually inflation is going to go up another year. We don't really see deflation bringing prices back down. Same thing for taxes. Taxes go up. Well, now we got to pay a bigger chunk. Well, that takes money out more than we expected. And so now that starts to deplete our money supply even quicker. And so those are some things that we really need to take a look at. And then the one thing I don't think people really think about enough is a surviving spouse. If somebody passes away, a husband passes away, now a surviving spouse can really be hit hard. They lose income and their tax rates go up typically because they're now single instead of married filing jointly. And so that's a big problem that we see with folks in retirement. And then children, they're having to care for aging parents, and that can be a problem within itself. Folks, all these things that we're talking about today, we look at and cover in our core retirement design, where we'll help you design the retirement you always dreamed of. It's simple. We look at market risk. We look at volatility. We look at income planning and make sure that you have an income plan that's going to last as long as you need it to. And then taxes. We want to make sure folks are paying the least amount of taxes possible. And that's all within our core retirement design. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis. It's a 30-minute phone call. You and I will discuss where you are, what path you're on, what maybe you need to do differently. Maybe you're doing everything great. You just need some reassurance. Again, call us at 863-877-1188.
There's no cost or obligation to speak with Phillip and his team. It's simple. There's no cost. There's no obligation. We just encourage you to not plan for retirement alone. Again, call that number 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Phillip, as we continue this conversation about our topic, making your retirement money last as long as you live, what steps can our listeners today take to help ensure that their retirement savings provides the income needed throughout their retirement years?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is we need to create a diversified income stream. We can't rely on one source of income. I mean, we know we're going to have Social Security. A lot of folks now don't have a pension, so they're going to have to create their own pension. And then they've got their investments. And so we need to make sure that we've got a diversified income stream, that we're not just counting on Social Security. We're not just counting on a pension, that we've got that three-legged stool taken care of. And then we need to make sure that we've got sufficient amount of reliable income just to meet our basic expenses. And so we need to make sure we've got that under wraps and ready to go. And then the last thing, we need to make sure we have a written retirement income plan. And we've talked about this a lot on our show. And that's part of our core retirement design. The third leg of that is making sure we have a written retirement income plan where you know where your income is going to come from year in and year out. And it's vitally important that we don't use overarching returns, right? We want to use something that's ultra conservative. Because if that works ultra conservative, we know if markets do better or our income's better, that we'll just be in a better spot down the road. But those are the three things that we really, really need to make sure that we have covered when we head into retirement.
Phillip, a lot of people have questions about this. So with financial security being a top priority, tailored especially to what seems to be indispensable. So can you do something like a personalized retirement income plan for us? So then that way people can kind of have an idea of the overall picture.
So when we put together an income plan, I use a bucket approach, right? We're going to put your money in several buckets, usually 4, sometimes 6 buckets of money, depending upon your current circumstances, because everybody is different. But we want to put those together and make sure that we know where that money is going to come from the first 5 to 7 years you're retired. Where are we getting that money? And then where do we go from there? And at the end, if I live to 100, do I still have some money left? We want to make sure that our growth bucket is keeping up with inflation. It's there to meet emergency things. And so we develop that into our whole system to know, hey, look, here's your retirement income plan. Here's what it looks like. Here's where your money's coming from. And here's what we anticipate that you should have each year. At the end of the time, hey, look, we get down to age 90. Here's how much money you should have left. And maybe at that age, you need more than what we anticipated because of inflation. Hey, now you've got it to work through. And so that's just an area that we have put together in our core retirement design, is that income plan, because it's just so important, Danielle.
And really quick, Phillip, many of our listeners are curious about the timing of retirement planning. So from your professional standpoint, when is the ideal time or age to begin preparing for retirement?
I'm going to say the ideal would be about 5 years before you get ready to retire. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't start a year before or right when you retire. It's the ideal would be 5. But if if you've already retired, I'm going to say it's not too late. We can still put together a plan, based on your current circumstances and your current portfolios to put together that income plan so that you know where your money is going to come from, month in, month out, year over year. That's important. And again, that's why I developed my core retirement design to help you design that retirement you always dreamed of. And it's a 30-minute phone call where you and I are going to talk candidly about where you are, where you should be, where you need to be, and how are you going to get there. It's 30 minutes. My gift to you. Give me a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis, where we'll look at market volatility, how much risk do you have in your portfolio. We'll look at the taxes you're paying now, and are there ways and things that we can do to limit your taxes over your retirement lifetime. And lastly, that all-important written retirement income plan, all part of our core retirement design. Again, give us a call at 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
We always like to remind our listeners that there's no cost or obligation to speak with Phillip and his team at Statler Financial Services. It's simple, like he mentioned. There's no cost, no obligation. All you have to simply do is call 863-877-1188. Again, that's 863-877-1188. Well, coming up next, we're going to dive into essential strategies to navigate the challenges of inflation, escalating healthcare costs, and taxes in retirement. That's right. We're going to dive into all of that coming up next right here on the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you're paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 863-877-1188. That's VISIT to 863-877-1188.
Surprise parties can be fun.
Surprise!
Financial surprises, not so much, especially when you're retired, like finding out you owe more in taxes than you thought you would, or having to go back to work to make ends meet. Maybe you'll be okay, but why not double check just to be sure? Call Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services and schedule a no-cost retirement double check at 863-877-1188. Phillip and his team have seen their fair share of surprises over the years and know how to help you avoid them. Call 863-877-1188 to schedule your no-cost retirement double check with Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services. Don't let a financial surprise derail your retirement dreams. Call 863-877-1188 now. That's 863-877-1188. You can also visit StatlerFinancial.com for more info. Advisory services are offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your RMD, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back into the show right here, the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, alongside Phillip Statler. He's the founder and president of Statler Financial Services. We're continuing the conversation about making your retirement money last as long as you. Because as we enter retirement and the subsequent stages of life, the financial landscape becomes increasingly complex, marked by, of course, rising inflation, stock market risk, and shifting tax obligations. There's so much. So Phillip is here to walk us through. So Phillip, let's explore how retirees can actually best manage these financial pressures. Let's begin with the challenge of stock market volatility.
Well, and that can be a challenge, right? Because we don't ever know which direction the market's going to go. We can have a couple good days, we can have a couple good weeks, a couple good months, and then all of a sudden things drop off. And so I think it's important that people understand that when we look at things, yes, you need some market exposure. But the problem is how much do you need? And that becomes the million-dollar question, is what do we need? Because we need to look at your age, how close you are to retirement, or how far are you into retirement, and making sure that we use appropriate applications for the investing process. And then we want to make sure that we're looking at the rule of 100. Now, what's that mean? Well, the rule of 100 simply states that, let's say you're 65 years old. It says we should have 65% of our portfolio safe and secure. 35% should be at risk. Now, what does that mean, safe and secure? Well, the definition should be into something where you cannot lose money. Because if we lose money, now we've got to make more to bring it back. So it's a case of making sure that we're in that area where we have some of our money where we cannot lose it. And then we can take risk with some of our other money to help catch up and beat inflation over time. These are two areas that we need to make sure that we're focusing on as we build our retirement plan.
You know, Phillip, another significant concern for retirees is that future tax rates could escalate. You kind of mentioned this earlier in the show, and that really affects a lot of retirees who have based their planning on current tax rates. So, Phillip, how can retirees safeguard their finances against the possibility of rising taxes?
Danielle, rising taxes are a huge possibility. I would say if I was giving it a statistical chance, I'd put it up there about 95% chance that we're going to see increased taxes, if not 99% chance, right? Because of a lot of things. One of them is our growing national debt. It is astronomical how much debt we have taken on in the last 4 or 5 years. And so somebody's got to pay that debt. Somebody's got to service the interest. We got to make the interest payment. Even if we don't pay the debt down, we got to pay the interest rates. And interest rates have gone up substantially over the last 2 years, 3 years. And so how do we pay it? Well, we got to raise taxes in order to pay that. So then the other thing we look at is we've got expiring tax cut legislation. Again, that would be the Trump tax code cuts, we call them. And that is going to happen at the end of 2025. So December 31st of 2025, our existing tax code reverts back to what it was before, starting January 1st of 2026, which means we are all going to see a tax increase on January 1st of 2026, unless something changes, and I wouldn't hold my breath. So we've got that issue we got to deal with. We need to be able to diversify where we pull our income from. We need to tax diversify our portfolios because most folks, when they retire, the majority of their money is in their 401k, their IRAs, which is all going to be taxable when they pull it out. And that can be a problem because a lot of folks out there have saved and have done a great job. But now, all of a sudden, at 73, you got to start pulling money out whether you want to or not because Uncle Sam wants to collect that tax revenue. So we'll look at things like Roth conversions. How can we maximize your current tax bracket? And it may be minimal things that we're able to do, but every little thing that we can move from a taxable account to a tax-free account is going to save you down the road. And that is part of our core retirement design process to walk you through that and make sure that we take care of taxes and try to get them as low as possible.
You know, there's also the pressure challenge of inflation, Phillip, right? We talked about taxes, but now we're moving on into inflation. So as the cost of living steadily climbs, retirees may find their budgets becoming increasingly tight, causing their savings to deplete more even quickly than anticipated. So I'm curious, how can retirees now adjust their financial plans when it comes to coping with inflation and maintaining their standard of living throughout retirement?
Yeah, that's right. Because a lot of folks that are retired now, let's face it, they put those plans together prior to 2021. And back then, man, we didn't have much inflation. I mean, if we had a 2% inflation rate, 2.5%, that was high. And so everybody built their plan based on no inflation, or very little inflation, I should say. And so now we have to revisit that. What do we need to tweak? What do we need to change to make sure that we don't run out of money as folks need to withdraw more to keep up with this inflation that we're battling right now? And then on top of that, if inflation wasn't enough, inflation when it comes to healthcare costs is even higher than typical inflation. And so that's another issue. And here's one that I think not enough people really pay attention to, and that's making sure you optimize your Social Security. Mm-hmm. Again, too many people, I believe, take Social Security at 62 because they're afraid it's going to run out. It's convenient. They don't really need the money. They just want to take it. Folks, you need to make sure that you're running the analysis to get to the best possible situation you can when it comes to Social Security. Again, that's one of the things we look at in our core retirement design. Give us a call, 863-877-1188, to schedule your core retirement analysis, where we'll help you make sure that you're on the path to the retirement you always dreamed of. It's simple, as easy as a 30-minute phone call. That number to call is 863-877-1188.
Like Phillip mentioned, there's no cost, there's no obligation. All you have to simply do is call that number, 863-877-1188. We like to remind our listeners that you don't have to plan for retirement alone. There's a lot of things changing right now. There's no need to try to figure it out yourself. Simply give Phillip and his team a call, 863-877-1188. Phillip, you mentioned it earlier about optimizing Social Security when it comes to inflation. Can you dive into that a little bit more? How can you help someone optimize their own Social Security?
Absolutely, Danielle. So the number one thing I would recommend for anybody out there that has not started taking their Social Security yet is to go to SSA.gov, that's Social Security Administration.gov, set up an account if you don't have one, and go get your Social Security statement. It's going to tell you, as of that now, how much you would get at 62, how much you would get at 67, which is most of our full retirement age, how much would you get at 70. That is an integral part of our planning process, because now we've got those numbers. We can now take that information and analyze it and determine, based on your other income, based on when you're going to quit working, when's the best time for you to take Social Security. And that's really, I think this other little part, Danielle, is that not enough people really think about this part of Social Security. It becomes a survivor benefit. So spouse that has the highest Social Security passes away, that Social Security is going to continue to go to the remaining spouse. Now, the remaining spouse is going to lose their Social Security, so we only get one, but you get the higher of the two. And so that's where planning becomes so important, is that, hey, look, if I can wait till 67 or even 68 before I take my Social Security and I drop dead, my spouse will continue to receive what I was getting, which was a higher amount than what she's getting. So we use it on that side of the coin too, to plan it from that standpoint. And so I think that's another area people don't think about when they're doing optimize their Social Security.
That's right, Phillip. And let's also leave our listeners with, what guidance could you offer to individuals who are potentially worried about outliving their savings? As we're talking about this whole thing about, outliving your money, how can we also not outlive our savings?
Well, I think it comes down to this, Danielle, is that we have to have a plan. And that plan has to be written so that you can pick it up and look at it and make sure that you are on target, to make sure we're running the way we need to be running. And so that's a big part of our core retirement design, is making sure we have that written retirement income plan where people know where their income is going to come from. We also need to look at how much are they spending, because that's a big deal. Right? If we're overspending, then that's going to really reduce our portfolio, which means we may come up short at the end. I've had to have some difficult conversations with folks that says, hey, look, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to run out of money. And that's difficult sometimes, but That's what we're here for. We're here to help coach people into and through retirement. Again, that's why I developed the core retirement design. That core retirement design looks at three key components of retirement. It looks at risk. How much risk are you taking? Because what I have found is about 60% of the folks out there have too much risk in their portfolio when they go into retirement. There's about another 10 to 20% that have not enough risk in their portfolio. And there's another 20% they hit it right. Here's what I will say, though. Don't think you're the one that got it right until you run an analysis to make sure, because that could be a dangerous bombshell if you get it wrong. That's number one. Number two is taxes. We want to make sure that folks in retirement are paying the least amount of taxes over their lifetime and hopefully over their beneficiary's lifetime. And so we'll run several analyses to make sure that we put together a plan where they can start taking advantage of their current tax brackets. And lastly is going to be our written retirement income plan, making sure that the income you get meets what you need and that we're still growing our portfolio so there's something left at the end, because we never know how long we're going to live. Give me a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
You do not want to miss this opportunity to speak with Phillip and his team. They will walk you through every step of your retirement plan. There's no cost. There's no obligation. It's simple. It's free. It's complimentary. Take this opportunity. Call Phillip and his team at 863-877-1188. You want to find out how you cannot outlive your savings, so simply give that number a call, 863-877-1188. We're just getting started here on the Statler Financial Radio Show. You want to stay with us. We have more coming up right after this. We'll be right back.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Phillip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815.
Surprise parties can be fun.
Surprise!
Financial surprises, not so much, especially when you're retired, like finding out you owe more in taxes than you thought you would, or having to go back to work to make ends meet. Maybe you'll be okay, but why not double check just to be sure? Call Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services and schedule a no-cost retirement double check at 863-877-1188. Phillip and his team have seen their fair share of surprises over the years and know how to help you avoid them. Call 863-877-1188 to schedule your no-cost retirement double check with Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services. Don't let a financial surprise derail your retirement dreams. Call 863-877-1188 now. That's 863-877-1188. You can also visit statlerfinancial.com for more info. Advisory services are offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Sounds like the mailman's here.
It's time to answer questions from the Statler Financial Mailbag.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Phillip Statler. He is the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. You know, Phillip gets questions each and every week about all things retirement. So, Phillip, I decided let's go in and, let's check in with our Statler Financial Radio Show mailbag to go over some common retirement questions. Are you ready to get started?
Absolutely, Danielle. Let's see what we got today.
Okay, let's see. So we're going to dive in. We have one from Bill from Avon Park. He says, I'm about to retire and I'm wondering if I should pay off my home first.
Bill, that's a good question. And it's one that's can be easy to answer, but let's talk about it from this standpoint. When we talk about paying off our house, a couple of things we need to know first that I don't have in front of me. And that is, what is your current interest rate on your home? And how much longer do you have to pay it off? And that would be a big deal. And so we would look at that. And then secondly, do you plan on staying here for the rest of your life in retirement? That's something we need to know. to understand if that makes sense or not to pay off your house. Typically, though, I would say that if you're paying, 3% or less on your mortgage, or even 3.5%, then you probably want to keep it, because typically you should be able to earn more than that in terms of investment. Even CDs right now, you think about, are paying more than that. So there are ways that you can make more than that. You definitely want to keep the mortgage and not take your hard-earned money and pay it off.
Really good insights there, Phillip. And Bill, thank you so much for your question. Okay, Phillip, let's see who's next. We have one from Scott from Lake Passett. He says, I've been hearing a lot about Roth IRAs. I'm wondering if I should do a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. Good question.
Good question. Hey, Scott, hold just one second. I want to go back to the other question. It just dawned on me one thing real quick. If you are planning on taking money out of a 401k or an IRA to pay off your home, a lot of times that is not a smart move because of the tax consequences. So I just wanted that just came to me as I was finishing up answering that question. So, all right, Scott, let's talk more about taxes, right? As we move into whether we should do IRAs or Roth IRAs. A lot of that is, what tax bracket are you in? I'm a firm believer. I personally use Roth IRAs. And I'll tell you why, because I feel like right now we are in the lowest tax brackets that we're going to see. Probably in my lifetime. I doubt that we'll see anything lower over my lifetime. So I'm putting money in Roth IRAs. And so I think that makes a lot of sense based on where tax rates are going to go. Now, there are some things that I think people can also start to think about when we're talking about traditional and Roth IRAs. A lot of people have money in their 401ks. They're going to roll those out to their IRAs when they get ready to retire. It's not a bad idea to start running some numbers to see, does it make sense to do some Roth conversions? Now, when you do a Roth conversion, they're not free. You have to pay the taxes on that money that you convert from your traditional IRA to the Roth. So think about that. If you say, I'm going to move $25,000 from my traditional IRA to my Roth IRA, right? I'm at a 10% tax bracket. Well, I can expect I'm going to have to pay at least $2,500 in taxes on that transfer. That may even push you into a higher tax bracket, which would push you up even higher. So you have to run the math. It's one of the things that we do in our core retirement design is run through a whole Roth scenario to see what the timeline would look like for folks. Because it also affects taxability of Social Security. If you do too much, it can make your Medicare premiums higher. There are all kinds of landmines out there that you got to be aware of when we start talking about Roth conversions, Danielle.
Phillip, I know a lot of retirees have questions about this, so definitely don't hesitate to give Phillip and his team a call at 863-877-1188. Again, that's 863-877-1188. Phillip, thank you for those insights. Okay, let's dive into our mailbag again. We have another question from Dan and Sally from Sebring. They say, I'm tired of being a landlord on my properties, but I'm not sure if I should sell them. So what are some of the pros and cons to renting out property as a supplement for retirement income?
Well, I would say let's start with the first part of your question here, because here's the deal. I kind of agree with you. It's easy to become tired of being a landlord. I was one for a while, and I don't think I'll ever be one again. It can be a problem, and I get that.
Right.
But here's what I want you to think about. Is the property paid for? I mean, I probably have more questions that need answers than before I can really tell you what direction to go. But here's some things to think about. Is the property paid for? If there's no mortgage on the property, then it's pure, rent money coming in. Granted, you still got to pay property tax, you got to pay insurance, and obviously you got to maintain them. But it would be nice to know, if they're paid for, that poses one issue. Because rental income is a nice cash flow, right? It's good. It's got good taxability. It's, it can be not all taxable. So because you got depreciation of the house. So there's some neat things there that you can do with real estate. Obviously, when you sell it, You have to think about the capital gains you're going to have to pay. What's that going to look like? What's it going to put you in a different tax bracket? How's that going to affect the taxability of your Social Security? I've had people sell property and all of a sudden their Medicare premiums skyrocket because that's income. And it plays a role in the how much they have to pay in terms of Medicare Part B premiums and how much of their Social Security ends up being taxable. So it's not just a simple, should I sell them or should I keep them? If you're tired of the landlord deal, there's always a management company. Hire a management company. Let them manage it. Let them take the headaches. Mm-hmm. It costs you a little bit of money, but if there's no mortgage and they're positive cash flow, that might be the answer to your question there, guys. Take a look at that.
Phillip, I know many retirees have questions about all of these different topics that we're talking about today. And with the remaining time that we have, I want to spend a little bit more time on this core retirement design that you and your team have crafted, specially and specifically for retirees. Tell us what's inside.
Absolutely, Danielle. So our core retirement design, we worked hard to build this out. And so it starts with risk. How much risk does your portfolio have? And how much risk should it have based on your risk tolerance, your risk number on a scale of 1 to 100? Where do you land? How close are you to retirement? What's your age? And so those things all go into consideration to determine how much risk you should have in your portfolio. And I will tell you this, Danielle, of all the folks that I've met with, I'm going to say probably 60% of the folks I meet with have too much risk in their portfolio. There's another almost 30% of the folks out there who don't have enough risk in their portfolio. So it's not over. There's people that don't have enough. And there's about 10% of the folks out there that have about the right amount of risk in that portfolio. So the second thing we want to look at is taxability. What do taxes look like in retirement? We want to do our best to reduce your long-term tax obligation for you, your spouse, and your beneficiaries. So we look at that component. And then lastly, we look at income, because income creates a confident retirement. And so we have developed a written retirement income plan that shows us here's where the money's going to come from. Social Security, pension, and here's the amount we have to make up. Here's what it looks like. Here's where it's going to come from. We look at buckets and what bucket money's coming from when. That's our core retirement design. When it's all put together, folks are confident about their retirement. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to start with your core retirement analysis.
Phillip, I always appreciate our time together. You always make retirement planning sound so easy, so thank you again for your time today. Now, if you have any questions about retirement, again, do not hesitate to call Phillip and his team at Statler Financial Services. They are here to guide you through a successful retirement. Again, do not hesitate to call Phillip and his team at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Now, thanks again for tuning into the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll catch you next week.
Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Second Half Financial Partners, LLC does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation. This radio show is a paid placement.